my name is Scott Propp. I'm a board member on the PDMA, and I'd just like to take this opportunity to welcome our presenters, Melinda, Emerson, and Britta Martin. You guys are in for a really good presentation this afternoon. As you can see, they've got their introduction slide up. They're both in very serious roles in product management with Best Buy organization, product director and associate product director. They have had a chance to put together a really fun presentation for us this afternoon. So I'm looking forward to where we go. I'll be watching the chat and monitoring for questions and be around the facility that. But right now, I'd just like to turn it over to Melinda and Britta. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. I'm Britta Martin, and I wanted to welcome everyone. Thanks for taking 20+ minutes of your time out today to hear what we have to say about a framework that has become really a staple at Best Buy for personal development. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is why the tool. And then we'll move into an overview of the framework itself. And finally, we'll provide a tactical, kind of a practical tip guide to how you can implement this tool for yourself at your office. And then we will go ahead and talk about your questions and answers with the remaining 10 minutes. So there we go. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's talk about why this tool, why this framework. If your week looks anything like my week, between admin tasks and strategy and discovery and all the activities that fall on your plate, then your struggle will be as real as mine, finding time to carve out for yourself and for your own development. And so really that's where this framework comes into play. It helps you with the little amount of time that you have to be very intentional about your development and the skills that you are trying to grow as a product manager. It's really a one-stop tool where you can identify where you want to focus, add some examples to where things are going well as some action planning for where you are trying to improve. So before Melinda dives into the tool in detail, I want to share a little bit about how Best Buy has implemented this tool really across our product organization. And we had a couple messages for what we call our is and is nots that we think are important to level set. So the tool really is a development tool to aid in someone's personal development of skills in the product management field. It is a collection of skills that can establish consistency across the product organization. And it is one of probably many components to your development guide. On the is not side, we don't require, this is not a requirements list of what you have to be a product manager, nor is it a checklist for an automatic promotion. And finally, this is not meant to be a performance management tool. So with that, I'm going to let Melinda dive into the tool itself.
Thanks, Britta. Now that you have the background on why we developed the skills framework, let's dive into more of the details. Through cross-team collaboration, we landed on 7 key categories that we think are important for product management. While these items are listed in a numerical order, they are not ranked in order of importance. Each of these categories has supporting documentation that outlines the specific skills that fall under each of the categories. Let's take a deeper look at one of the categories. For example, customer empathy. This we have several different groupings that fall under here that we think are really critical to be successful at product management. The first thing is identifying customer problems. Second is translating customer problems. And then we have some discussion about continuous customer discovery and research. The second grouping is business acumen. And in this area, we talk about driving value for the business, optimizing for outcomes, tracking industry trends, and being able to use all that to assess decision and how much impact your decisions will have on the business. The third category, which can sometimes be a little bit controversial depending on which product organization you're in, is technical acumen. And at Best Buy, we feel that having some technical acumen is important to be a really successful product manager. This doesn't mean you need to know everything about the technical side of your business, or you need to code, or you need to be a solution architect, but it's knowing enough to understand kind of how long things might take and what impacts your system might have with others. And so here we're just looking at technical understanding of your products, knowledge of industry trends within the technology space that's impacting your products, and having a good understanding of the development process. The next category is critical thinking. So this is for making data-informed decisions, evaluating trade-offs, and being decisive once you have all the data. Then we have a category that's very broad, communication. But we know this is really a critical to be successful. And here we talk about written communication, which we know is becoming much more important as we are in a remote state, and a lot of our communication with our team members and our stakeholders is asynchronous. But it's also verbal, right? We still have meetings, we're still communicating on a one-to-one basis, but now across screens. And then also it's the frequency. So how are you managing all those three things to be really effective in your role? The next one, which is very tied closely to with communication, is stakeholder management or stakeholder engagement. This is all about how are you engaging with your stakeholders? How are you influencing and inspiring them? And how are you nurturing those relationships? The last one we have is product team leadership. And I'm going to take us into a little bit more detail on there to show you how we broke this one out and all the categories out to another level so that you could really do a deep assessment of where you feel that you are in those spaces. So for each of the categories, we have a slide that looks like this, that has these top level categories that fall under there. So for product team leadership, for example, we have these 3 categories among some others. For example, we think is really important to drive success within your team. So you have approachable and available. That's something that's critical to be successful. But then we also have some behaviors that are very specific that are tied to that, so that you can really dig in and say, hey, where am I in all these individual things, and what specifically can I be doing to improve myself in this space? So we have this for all of the categories. And then this is where you can start to pull those very specific things to have those conversations with your leader or your mentor. Now that we've gone over what the categories are for the assessment, probably wondering, well, how do I actually rate myself on these things? We created a rubric that creates a uniformity for us to have this discussion across all of our teams and with our leaders. So you'll see we have 5 different categories, ranging from aware to experts. And within these 5 categories, there's basically 3 different elements to consider and where to place yourself. One is the complexity of your context. The second is the amount of mentorship that is required for you in that space. And then the third is the scope of influence. We're going to go into that a little bit more detail on the next slide. So this slide breaks this down even further. So you'll see if you're in the aware category, this might be somebody who's brand new to product management. They may be working on a smaller team or have a very small scope that they're working on. It might be a product specialist, for example. And maybe their responsibilities are, just learning the products and writing user stories and having influence within maybe just themselves or with their team. So in that space, their complexity of their context is probably simple,
Melinda,
but they're probably going to need a lot of help with that. They're brand new to product management, and either their peers are helping them, their managers helping them, or they may have, their leader is checking in with them on a regular basis. So at that point, they're probably not doing a lot on their own. And then their scope of influence is smaller. They're not talking to stakeholders throughout the organization. They're just, kind of working within themselves. I mean, use at the other end of the spectrum, if you're an expert, that could be in any context, but likely you have experience in working potentially with multiple teams or squads. You have lots of stakeholders. You potentially have a lot of different other teams that you might need to work with if you work in a large organization like we do. Your products may have different technology coming from up to 10 to 20 other product teams that are influencing your products. And then at this point, you're not getting a lot of mentorship. Obviously, you have a manager that's helping you, but in general, you're working very much on your own. You don't need a ton of help within the product management space. And then your scope of influence could be quite large, right? You're working with maybe with a lot of teams within the digital or technology space. You might be working really broadly with stakeholders throughout the organization. So that's sort of the scope of where you could rate yourself. But there's some elements here that could be a little bit tricky, because sometimes somebody might come with an experience that they might rate themselves higher than what their role potentially gives them at that time. And that's where you can really have a good discussion with your mentor or leader about how you can find opportunities to continue to grow in your space. Maybe you had an opportunity in your previous world where you were, doing something from a customer perspective, from continuous discovery, and you haven't had that opportunity in this current role. Well, then you can have that discussion about how do I demonstrate this to you so that we can have that feeling that I'm moving forward in my career.
We have a little bit of crosstalk between the microphones. I don't know if you guys can mute when you're not speaking. That might help.
Britta, are you able to mute? Okay, now that we went over the rubric, we're going to show you what the tool looks like itself. We did not invest money in a big fancy tool. We instead are using everybody's favorite tool is Excel spreadsheet. So the good news about that is that we then can share it with everybody too. So we looked into a bunch of different options and decided this worked best for us. So I'm just going to go through a couple slides here that show you what the spreadsheet looks like. We decided not to pull the spreadsheet up just because it's back and forth of switching between different tools can be a little bit tricky in these situations. But what you'll see here is the screenshot of the top part of our skills framework. You'll see that each of the categories has its own section. So for example, customer empathy is listed there first, and then those next level categories are there. And you can then select the boxes where you feel like you fit based on the criteria and the rubric that were provided. Ideally, you could do this ahead of time, and your leader or your mentor could do this ahead of time as well. And then when you can group together and talk and compare to say, where are we different? Where are we the same? If that's not an option for your leader, maybe they don't have availability to do that. If you can just do it for yourself ahead of time and then bring that to the conversation, you can just make the check marks in the document as you are having that discussion. So we have an option over on the right-hand side where you can give specific examples about how you feel like you've demonstrated these types of behaviors in the past. And there's a section below that has examples and notes. So I don't have the whole document here, but I just wanted to give you a flavor so you can see that we have the different categories listed there. So now I'm going to hand it back to Britta, and she's going to help us understand how you can implement this for yourself and maybe even your organization.
Okay, thanks, Melinda. So now you're sold. You want to carve out some time for intentional and efficient development planning. So what do you do next? So I broke it down into 3 steps, and there's 2 different types of product managers. One of you may feel as though you want to bring this to your organization like Best Buy did. So in step 1, I'll speak to that a little bit. Or you may just want to use this tool yourself and forego the greater cause. So either way, it's important that you start with alignment that these skills are representative of product practice at your company with your manager or leader. If you're focused on the organizational level, you can follow the path that we did at Best Buy, which has established a working team that was representative of the diverse types of product teams across our organization. We worked together to flesh out all the details of the rubric and the skills assessment until we had a finalized set of shared goals and skills as a tool. So from there, we cascaded it throughout our organization. Again, if you're just looking to deploy this yourself, at least have the conversation with your manager. Everybody will get a copy of this tool, I understand, and you can ask if they have alignment on the skills so that you can start using it or tweak it as you need. Second, then you would sit down with your leader, a mentor, or even a really trusted peer and go through the exercise that you saw where you can rate yourself across the dimensions and ask for their feedback and have a healthy dialogue to get a good sense of where you're currently at. And finally, possibly the most meaningful step is to set a plan for yourself. Work with your mentors and your leaders to figure out how you can have growth in areas that you identified need growth and that you want to focus on. And then you'll repeat this process to get a sense of your progress and where to focus next. So we have a couple comments that have been shared from folks within our company that you'll see. We'll put the screen up while you ask your questions, and Scott will read those to us, but hopefully we can address them here. And so the feedback that we're seeing is real commentary from product managers in our organization who have tried the tool. So with that, I'll ask if we have any Q&A.
So I think
I also wanted to call on, I forgot to mention this at the, I'm sorry, Scott. I forgot to mention at the beginning that there's not two Britta Martins here. I'm Melinda. We, for some reason, cannot figure out how to get my name changed. So just how Nancy will say was Steve at the beginning of the conference. I am also, we have two Brittas in this one. So if anyone's confused, I'm Melinda. Other one,
thank you for clarifying that. I was thinking the same thing as I was looking at the three windows on top of. So the chat has been a little quiet, so I will give everybody an opportunity to add their thoughts to that. I'll kick it off though with a question. I'm curious, as you guys have rolled this out, what has been the experience? One, and two is how often do you plan on iterating and kind of raising the bar and focusing the criteria?
Sure, I can take that one. As you see, the feedback has been really positive from the people who have used it thus far. We rolled it out about 2 months ago, which was a little bit of a tricky time period because for those of you who know the retail business, this is one of our busiest times of the year. So we know that people will be continuing to use it once we have a little bit of a lull in action in late December into early January. The people that have used it have given us a lot of positive feedback. And the thing that they've said so far is that it's really, they've had probably the most meaningful conversations that they've had with their leaders so far about their developments. And the conversations have been taking quite a while. They've, I think because it's the first time, they said it's been at least an hour and probably almost 2 hours to get through all of it and have a really good in-depth discussion. And in terms of frequency, our original recommendation was to potentially do it twice a year. At Best Buy, we have more of a quarterly cadence for kind of conversations about your development, but that felt too quick because some of these things take a little bit of time. If you have some recommendations on how to grow in that space, you might not be able to get that done and have some feedback within a quarter. So our recommendation was biannually. And we'll see if that's how it ends up being, but that's sort of where people have sort of confirmed that seems about the right amount of time.
Yeah, thank you. Linda asks, does this complement the HR review process or replace it?
I can say that if you want to, Britta, or not. This
really
is for us.
I was trying to unmute. Sorry.
Okay, I'll take it, Britta. It's a complement. We do not want this to replace anything that's happening from a larger organizational perspective. But in our experience, there's kind of a segment within our broader organizational quarterly conversations is what we call them. That's more about your personal development. There's part that's about how you're adding to the general business, but then also what are you doing to drive your own personal development? And this is where that can really help kind of have that discussion. So we have not tied them, and part of we wanted people to do this when they have the time and they have the ability to do that, versus making it tied to something else that we don't need more stress of trying to tie two things together. So they can happen in sequence or they could not. That's our perspective.
Okay. Excellent. Nicole asks about the resources aligned to each competency and how and perhaps a pathway for people to improve in those areas. Do you guys have a path to resources, mentorship, other things that can help them progress in these areas?
That's a good question, and really good. Can you hear me okay?
We can now.
Okay, great. I don't mind taking this one. So it's a great question because the heart of it is once you identify areas to improve, how will you actually put that into action? And right now, I think, and Melinda, you can correct me if you're wrong, we don't have a formal mentorship method. It is left up to individuals to find mentors for those. But we do have multiple resources available, a community of practice, a learning lounge, and places that you can go at Best Buy to try to develop that actual tactical plan. I think my advice for somebody who takes the assessment and realizes there's some areas to grow, maybe isn't sure how to do that, is to add that to the conversation directly with your either a mentor or a manager to say, hey, I really feel like I am not getting enough exposure or practice here, or it's an area I want to grow. I'm not sure how to get that started, and see what feedback you get there. Anything you'd like to add to that, Melinda?
Yeah, we did put together a library of sorts based on the categories of different references of articles or books that people recommended that align to each of the broader categories as a starting point. So, and we also have some internal tools, some, education through like Harvard Business Review that gives some training on, stakeholder management or even technical or business acumen. There's a few of those elements that are kind of broader that are available through our organization. So we made those available as a reference point, but I think Britta's point is more valuable, is having that conversation with your mentor or leader about what they think is most meaningful and from what they've seen from you and what they think can help you grow the most.
Excellent. Linda asks, is there a dedicated budget to support the development opportunities what kind of potential resources are there for folks to go after this?
At Best Buy, we do have, you can go. I'll just stay muted because there's such a lag in unmuting and it's very complicated.
Sorry about that, Britta. So we do have budgets available for people to invest in themselves. Both, internally the teams have, the managers have a budget available for teams to use for different uses. And then we also have our product broader community that has budgets that we bring in speakers, different trainings and things. And so that's something that we're going to be listening to as people continue to complete the skills framework and start bubbling up back to the product community. But what are those types of things that are most meaningful that maybe we can help continue to grow in that space and bring specific, leaders in those different areas to come talk to us.
Excellent. And is there a data from the process? Do you guys get feedback on how well it's working inside the organization for the community that you're working with?
We did not formalize a communication feedback loop. Right now it is sort of more informal through Slack. We have regular community of practice meetings where people can provide feedback. Those are kind of the two paths of communication. We really did debate when we rolled this out of how much should we want to collect data on this. So one of the things, as product managers, we're always like, how can we get data back from our customers on whether this is working or not? Originally we thought, well, we're going to have everybody fill this out and then we'll have somewhere where they can put their scores somewhere else so we can track where are the ones that we need to have a focus area within, bring in speakers or trainings. And as we thought through that a little bit more, we realized that we really just wanted this to be a tool for people to use. We didn't want people to, we didn't want it to be something that felt like anyone was checking up on them or it was competing with other things within the organization. So it's really just a tool. And if people want to funnel that feedback back to our group, then we are happy to take it and use it to continue to grow the practice.
Yeah, excellent. So if others have questions, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just keep asking them. I am curious if someone, and there's many folks attending Product Camp that are peer level product management types that may want to get this started in their organization. What kind of advice would you have for a small community to get this started at a grassroots level inside a mid-size or larger organization?
Yeah, I think the first thing is it's nice to have something to start with. So we had some different tools. There's a few different things out there that there's other tools. If you just Google product management, assessment, there's things out there that you can kind of start with. So we did that and kind of got a bunch of things together and started figuring out whether, what makes sense for us and what's important to our organization to be successful. And then you can start having those robust discussions. So you can either Google that or even start with our document. We're going to be sharing this with everybody. So you can start somewhere and just figure out, does this make sense for us? Because we took some things out that some other assessments have. And we added some things that we just thought were critical based on where we are in our product management transformation that we think people would likely need to focus on. So it's just having something to start with, and then like as Britta mentioned at the beginning, having a good cross-functional representation of the different types of teams, and just kind of debating. Like we just sat in rooms and talked about, well, is this right? Is this not right? Like how would we change this? And then have somebody just take it and wordsmith it and send it back out and get feedback. We started with a smaller group. We had maybe 6 or 7 people that were working on it initially. And then once we had a draft, then we started circulating it, a little bit broader and then a little bit bigger, and started getting feedback. And then we did a little user study internally. So we took it and had one team. We had, maybe 5 to 10 people go through it and give us some feedback. So we just it was like a self-iteration iteration on our tool as well.
Excellent, excellent. One question.
And one thing I'd like to add to that, if my microphone is working, can you hear me, Scott?
Yes.
I just think it's important because you specifically mentioned if you're kind of a mid-level product manager wanting to bring it to the organization, and Melinda mentioned a group of 6 or 7 to get the ideas going. It would be really important to recognize whom the product leaders are in your organization and have a step in there where you're getting their input too. So in addition to any working team would need to include the more senior team in some respects to make sure that you've got that buy-in stuff covered.
Excellent, excellent. Rebecca asks, how do you assess when you're at the next level of being a product manager based on the acquired skill set? So is there, do you guys feel like there's a clear distinction, or is it kind of analog?
Britta, do you want to take that one, or you want me to?
So if I'm understanding, sure. If I'm understanding the question, I think, and maybe Rebecca can chat if I'm off track, but I think what she's asking is if she thinks she's operating at a level higher. Is that how I interpret the question? How do you work through that?
How you would do the assessment of whether she's operating at the next level based on what you guys presented.
Gotcha. Well, and Melinda, your opinion can be, you can interject, but my suggestion for the tool is that there's a little bit of a delineation between how your organization is leveling product managers from entry to mid to senior, and this tool itself. This tool is going to help you go through what the critical skills of a product manager are and how you're achieving them. There's something in between that and a performance or promotional type of a step, that something else within your organization that will articulate what they expect of a level 8 or 9 or 10, which is the way we're graded at Best Buy. So I don't think this tool is, well, it's certainly not intended to tell you you're ready for promotion or not. It really is intended to help you to get a good sense of where you are on the skills. And you can have that second discussion with your manager around, well, what does this mean for your readiness to move into the next level as it relates to how your organization organizes the product levels. Is there anything you'd want to add to that, Melinda?
No, I think you nailed it. It is just sort of getting your skills ready so that when those new roles come available, then you can say, I'm very clear on where my strengths are, and I've demonstrated these, so that prepares you for the next level.
Excellent. Well, it's 3:20, so we need to wrap up. Jay asked, is the Excel file available? So The recording of this presentation will be available through this platform for some time. I think it's at least 30 days. And also you can reach out on the platform to both Britta and Melinda if you guys have other follow-ups. And I knew they had this slide. Excellent. So you also obviously clearly can reach out to them on LinkedIn. So I just like to, on behalf of the PDMA board, just really thank you guys for putting this together and adding this to the conversation. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.